It might be from a black barrel, but this is one bright, fresh whiskey. I'm going to be talking today about Jameson's Black Barrel Whiskey. Welcome to Dram Fine Whiskey. My name is Matt, and like I said, today I'm looking at Jameson's Black Barrel Whiskey. So let me get this into the glass. If you're new here though, scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put out a new whiskey review every Wednesday and a new cocktail recipe every Friday. So hit subscribe and you'll see them all. So if I were to describe what makes this whiskey different to the regular Jameson, it would be the fact that they use black barrels. So when coopers prepare a barrel, they go through various stages of charring the inside. So they go through layers of toasting a barrel, where it just has a light amount of char on the inside, up into charring a barrel. Charring a barrel has various levels, and the more heavily charred the inside of a barrel, the more of those kind of spicy, oaky notes you're going to get out of it, but also the more of the sweetness, those kind of caramel, vanilla notes you get out of the barrel. For this whiskey, Jameson have aged some of their whiskey in these heavily charred first fill bourbon barrels, and they've aged some of the whiskey in kind of refill or second fill or lightly charred casks to kind of give a nice balancing out to that extra spiciness you're going to get from that heavily charred cask. It does retail a little higher in price than the regular Jameson, so let's go in for the nose and see if it's worth it. Immediately, that kind of Jameson note is very apparent. Like the Jameson grain is quite apparent to me. It's quite familiar to me. I've drunk a lot of Jameson in my life, but it's also got that nice, deeper caramel note coming through. Like it's very apparent that I think something else is going on in this whiskey. Like that caramel sweetness is very clear. There's a bit of vanilla coming through as well. Like I'm not getting a huge amount of charred or toasted oak coming through. Like that's kind of welcome. It can be sometimes an overpowering note, so it's good to see that the way they blended this whiskey, they have kind of removed some of that maybe unpleasant charred note and left in all the sweetness and the caramel notes. There's also like a little bit of stone fruit. If you imagine like not a plum, but maybe something like a really dark, rich kind of fruitiness that comes through. The Jameson note typically does have nice like fruity notes that come through the whiskey. It's quite a light whiskey in that regard, and there's like maybe a little bit of dark cocoa powder, like really kind of rich cocoa powder, but not a huge amount. It's just a light bit of note on the nose. Okay, that's enough about the nose. Let's go in for the palate. First note I get, the moment it hits my tongue, caramel. It's very, very caramel forward, very sweet, very forward on that caramel. As it sat in my mouth though, there's a little bit of kind of that Jameson spicy kind of dried fruit coming through, but again that vanilla came through. It led with the sweetness. Let's just lean in with that. Like it definitely went with the sweetness. So I'm gonna go in again and see if I can find more of those dried fruits, more of that kind of typical Jameson spiciness that you'd expect. Okay, second go around, like the caramel is still there, but I was able to pick out more of those spiciness notes there. There's some kind of cinnamon and clove coming through. There's definitely a little bit of oak spice coming through. I can taste a little bit of charred oak. It wasn't really there, as I said, in the nose, but it's much more apparent in the palate. That kind of tingly, kind of mouth tingling oak spice definitely there, especially on that oak charred note coming through. This is a whiskey that comes in at 40% ABV, so it's right at the floor of what a whiskey can be, but it's actually surprisingly rich. Like it's a lot denser in flavour, a lot more richer on the mouthfeel than that standard Jameson, and I think that's a welcome change. So let's go in again, but we'll talk about the finish. Okay. As those spices, they're quite apparent as they start to fade away, as that caramel kind of hit up front, that upfront caramel hit, as that starts to fade away. Again, as I said, more that oakiness comes through. Definitely a nice, strong vanilla note comes through. Not like that artificial vanilla, like the vanilla extract you get, like a real vanilla bean. Like it's really, really rich note that's coming through. The last note I'm lingering with here is that spice. It's somewhere between a clove and oak spice. It's kind of those two spices balanced against each other. It's quite nice. As that sweetness fades away, I'm kind of left with a bit of spiciness. It's quite a nice little whiskey. I definitely think it's a step up from the regular Jameson. And I think that's what they were pitching at. Like, this is meant to be a whiskey that you can get in most stores that is just a step above the standard Jameson. Like, it's not going to be mind-blowing. It's not going to be one of their signature releases that is kind of specialized or different. This is meant to be enjoyed, and they've made a whiskey that's easy to enjoy. And I wouldn't feel guilty using this whiskey in a cocktail. I mean, if you go to the Jameson distillery or the Jameson website, their recipe for a whiskey sour uses Jameson Black Barrel, and I can definitely see why they do that. I mean, those rich caramel vanilla notes are there, but also that kind of spiciness is there, and I think that would balance really well against the lemon juice, the sugar syrup. I think that would balance really well, more so than the regular Jameson if you're using this in a cocktail. This is also a 1 litre bottle that I picked up at an airport a while back, so I definitely don't feel guilty using this in a cocktail, but it's also just easily nice to sip this neat. It's got a nice bit of flavour. It's a bit different to the regular Jameson. It stands out a bit more, and it's not too much of a jump in price. Like, yes, it is a bit more expensive, but you are also getting, I think, a better whiskey. So I think that's where I'll leave this little review. It's a nice whiskey. It's an easy to enjoy whiskey. If you're looking at it, if you're thinking, oh, should I pay the extra few euro? Should I pay the extra few dollars? Should I take a step up from Jameson? I think yes. I think exploring whiskey, I think trying new whiskies is always a good thing. So I'm going to keep on enjoying this one, and I will see you next time. Sláinte.